The other night we did watch a documentary, in part because you know the man who oversaw the
Wonderful
documentary.
director Randy Martin, who is a filmmaker, documentarian, who's done amazing documentaries from Journey to Clint Eastwood to Guns N' Roses, Lucille Ball, on and on and on. And he did this amazing documentary, which he told me about a year ago, and it was doing the festival circuit, and then finally they sold it to Amazon, and so we watched it.
We watched it on Saturday night. It's about the rise and the tragic fall of one Karen Carpenter. So we've talked in the show about great and not so great voices. So let's go from not great Sabrina Carpenter to arguably greatest voice ever in Karen Carpenter.
And if you don't know who she is, just look up the Carpenters, and probably somebody has had their song at their wedding from
We've only just begun. Rainy Days and Mondays,
every song.
Close to You, Superstar, which is our favorite, On Top of the World, which is a sort of a catchy pop song, but it'll get in your head.
Brian Wilson's favorite Beach Boys song.
Favorite
Carpenter song,
yes,
from the Beach Boys.
And the Carpenters did a Christmas album that gets played again and again and again over every Christmas holiday period. So the documentary is called Starving for Perfection, because Karen Carpenter suffered from anorexia. She was probably the first big celebrity to publicly suffer and then die from anorexia, what was called nervosa at that point.
She didn't have it in the beginning of her career, but as her career began to rise, the pressure of being perfect,
her discomfort with the spotlight, it, so to speak, ate her alive. And then the revelation to me, because I didn't follow it that closely, when she did die in 1983, I believe it was. She was only 32 years of age. She was just getting started. And she died of this syrup that you can take called Ipecac.
She died from a heart attack.
Yeah, but the
throwing
prolonged use of this syrup, which induces vomiting. So you eat and then you need to throw up. Some people can get away with for a while just sticking your fingers down your throat to induce vomiting. But if you're really great at it, so to speak, you need this syrup, which is very hard on the heart, and finally induced a heart attack, which killed her at age 32.
And there's some really great people in this documentary that were close to her, from Olivia Newton-John, Carol Burnett. Carney Wilson talks about the influence of Karen Carpenter and the Carpenters on the Beach Boys and her dad, famous, wonderful icon, Brian Wilson. And it's such an amazing story, because I think her voice has to be one of the best voices that have ever lived as a female singer.
I mean, we can argue Whitney Houston and Barbra Streisand.
Well, she's right up there.
Yeah, she's up there.
Because she has a one-of-a-kind voice.
It's just
that there's
one of a
no
kind.
one else.
And it's just
effortless.
Just piercing, because it's a throatier, huskier voice that has real power to it.
But at the same time,
check
she
her
was
out
amazing.
on YouTube.
But she was one of the first female drummers, because she had this talent that her brother was a great piano player, pianist as a kid.
And an orchestrator. He was sort of the quote-unquote brains behind the operation, but she was the talent.
Voice, but she could drum, because when she was a little girl,
tomboy-ish.
Yeah, she was a tomboy and created this wonderful talent that.
Okay, so now to the topic for the two of us. We have both battled different kinds of eating disorders, and we still have our love-hate relationship with food in different ways. But how did this documentary impact you?
To me, I think every girl at some point in their life goes through this, especially now. It's worse than ever, because all you see are thin, thin, thin. When I was younger...
I don't know, there is the big butt craze.
Yeah, but girls usually, growing up, you don't really want to be heavy, you want to be thin. That's really what it was. Now it's okay, a little bit better to be heavier, because they're big, beautiful models, and it's a different. But when I was growing up, Twiggy was before my generation, but
Yep.
everybody wanted to be thin. And so, of course, and I grew up in an Italian Jewish house, which we ate a lot of food, and it was normal to have on every table challah bread, Italian bread, cheese, pasta, everything in the world. And my mother was a great cook. And
Always
so,
dessert.
yeah,
at
my
your
mother
house.
homemade desserts. I never ate a box cake ever. Maybe once in a while as a surprise. My father would bring home an Entenmann's cake or Dunkin' Donuts. My mother made cream puffs. Everything every night was a strawberry shortcake from scratch. And so when I was like 10 years old, I was a size 11, which to me, I'm not that tall, is a little bit chunky. And so then I went the reverse, and I remember eating like a half of a grapefruit and a half of a melon for the day, and drinking black coffee, and taking, back in the day, they had these things, it's a really weird name, it's called AIDS, AIDS, but they were eating, to help you suppress your appetite. And I was popping those, they're like candies, and drinking black coffee. And it's really like a speed. And I remember my heart jumping out of my, chest, and, losing my period because I lost so much weight. And so then.
Didn't you go through a running phase?
Oh yeah, then the minute I would eat, I would run. I would go outside and run like another mile just to get rid of the half a grapefruit and half a melon. And then eventually it just stopped. I just decided I wasn't going to do it anymore. And I think I moved into New York City, and that cured me because I was commuting. And when you commute, you're really, your whole day is screwed up from being on a train and then coming home. And so then it stopped, and I haven't. And I am someone that can never throw up. I can count on one hand how many times in my life I've thrown up, because I always have a fear of throwing up, and I don't like throwing up. My sister can throw up at the drop of a hat. My mother could throw up at the drop of a hat. I'm someone, if I have to throw up, it's like, you've seen me one time in the whole 19 years we know each other.
I saw it.
When I had food poisoning, and I freak out. So I could never be that type of anorexic, but I think it affects everyone. And then if you don't nip it fast enough, this is what happens. And back then, I don't think people were as in tune to it as they are now, especially if you were a star. Someone would intercept. Now, you would hope and say, hey, like the brother who probably was on tour and would probably know that she was throwing up in the bathroom, whenever you would say, we need to do
the documentary revealed he was fighting Quaalude issues.
Quaalude, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you would think somebody would do an intervention, but.
Yet, even you, as of late, have fought this perception that some of our friends have that you're too
because
thin.
I'm thin, but
we have
I
a couple
can't
of doctor
help it.
friends who say, Ernestine, you're just too skinny. You need to eat more. You need to blah, blah, blah.
And it's really offensive after a while, because it's not that I don't eat, but I don't eat junk. So when you don't eat junk, and I'm not anorexic, but what happens is when you're not eating, and I've been the same weight for the last, 30 years, okay? 20, since I've known you, I've been this weight, so that's 20 years, and I was like this another 20 before. So I just don't eat junk, and I don't drink, and I don't do drugs, and so I'm healthy, and I walk a lot, and that's what I am. And so, it's not as though it's an eating disorder. It's just what I am. I've always been a size 0.
Although we did weigh the other day, and you were down a little bit.
Well, that was from stress. Yes, I've been under a lot of stress. So when I'm under a lot of stress, my metabolism goes faster, and I just eat. Whatever I eat just goes away. Okay. And so, but I've been now eating more to gain back the 3 pounds that I lost. I think you look great. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Think your weight is fine. Well, but I know when I'm down 3 pounds. Yeah, so if I'm down 3 pounds, for me, it's a lot. Speaking of weight, you hit the weights. You do weights. Well, I work out 3 times a week, and every single day I either run or I do the bike. But I also walk. Like today, I'll walk to Beverly Hills, and that's 3 miles. But I'm used to walking because I lived in back. Right. But I lived in New York City, and all you do is walk. Everybody walks in New York City. Agreed. And so when I moved out here, it's just part of my life. I don't like not walking. Yeah. The only thing I don't love about your regimen is that
you tend to wake up, you will have a shake, a protein shake in the morning.
I have a protein shake in the morning, and I'll have a protein bar, or else I have an English muffin. I'll have a shake, and I'll have an English muffin with either cottage cheese or almond butter on it. And then
Low fat cottage cheese, I
yeah,
would think.
low fat cottage
Okay.
cheese. Well, I don't want to get cholesterol.
No, I understand.
I mean, when I go to the doctor, my doctor tells me that there's not one thing wrong with my blood work that comes back.
I've
He
seen
said,
it.
I wish I could find something wrong with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with
Okay.
you. So
All good.
something is in,
Okay.
proof is in
The
the
only
pudding.
thing I don't love about the way you attack your day is you kind of build your food intake up through the day to where your crescendo is always at night when you eat, to my eye, a pretty big dinner.
But I
Like
have
that's your
lunch, but
biggest.
my lunch is like, my lunch can vary. My lunch can go from whether I'm in Beverly Hills and there's a yogurt thing called Go Greek, and I go there and I get a big yogurt with 100 different toppings on it, not junk. This is good stuff. I
Yeah.
get wheat germ and I get, raisins but no junk, and I walk back home. Or else if I'm here, I eat lunch around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sometimes 5 o'clock.
Sometimes 5 o'clock,
then
depending on my day, and then I
8 or
eat.
9.
But I'm
she
a
eats
late
a
night
big
eater
dinner.
because I did in New York City my whole life. I ate dinner every night at 9 o'clock.
Okay, all right.
And then I go to bed by 11.
Well, whatever you're doing, it's working because you don't look too thin to me.
Well, I can only be who I am.
I mean, it concerned me a bit that your weight's down a bit.
Well,
just
it
a
concerned
bit.
me too, but I've been now
Okay,
eating
but
more.
it's
But
fine.
when you lose 3 pounds, I'm not big.
Okay.
So, I mean, when I went to the doctor, he said to me, look, just add a couple more 3 pounds back and you'll be fine.
Okay.
But
So the Karen Carpenter documentary did impact me. It shook me, jarred me. I lost some sleep over it because I have had issues for many years
you did.
with food, dating to, like to 1982 when I first started running. And what I learned was, in the beginning, the more I ran, the more I could eat. Well, that starts to...
That's a catch-22.
Well, what it does is you start to go over the edge into what is called, to me, exercise bulimia. And remember, there's a little difference here, and I'm not a student of this or a doctor, but there's a difference between anorexia and bulimia. Bulimia is the one where you
Throwing
eat
up.
and
Purge,
eat, purge, binge purge. And what I started doing, because it worked, and I don't starve for perfection, I started to run for perfection.
Well,
because
it becomes addicting.
Yeah, because I wanted to stay the same weight
Yeah.
while eating whatever my heart desired. By the way, you're killing your heart, which I didn't understand at that point in the very beginning, where it was just so unhealthy because I was just pigging out while I trained for marathons.
Well, that's what people do as yo-yo dieting. They go up and they go down. They gouge themselves, then they cut back. And
Gorge,
then they or whatever. But their heart, that's the problem.
You just can't take the beating of it. So what I was doing was, back in the day, as I was training for my first marathon, I would eat anything. I was big on Mexican food. My brother's a big Mexican cook, but I'm talking about Tex-Mex because those were my Dallas days. Ice cream. God, I binged on whatever I wanted to eat.
Well, 'cause you knew you were
hamburgers,
gonna
hot
run.
dogs, because I was running at one point, this was for my second marathon, I was averaging 120 miles a week. But I began to find that, Hazel wants to see Mom.
But how many runners do you, when you watch the marathon, the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, everyone is super thin.
Okay,
They're really
because
thin.
you're just going to get thin running that much. But what you also learn is, if you're going to eat that badly and pig that aggressively to where you're binge eating, you can't defeat it with miles run.
No.
That you're going to start to develop love handles in some spare tire around your waist, as I found that I was. My body fat was higher than it should have been because I was eating so badly while running, but my face got gaunt and thin, and friends would kid me about, you look like you've been in
Yeah.
concentration camp.
Well, because you always, when you lose weight, your cheekbones, you have high cheekbones,
high
they always
cheekbones,
get more
okay.
pronounced.
Okay, so I finally figured out, and my schedule changed too because I started doing early morning radio,
Yeah.
and it sort of wiped out. I used to either, I would run an hour, and then I would also on top of that exercise bike for an extra hour, and it was strictly exercise bulimia because I felt like if I did 2 hours of cardio a day, I could eat whatever I
Yeah.
wanted and I was not going to get fat. Then I started to get a little bit of fat and it shook me up. Then I started doing morning radio and it took me out of it. I actually, at one point, thanks to an old friend of mine, I went to counseling one time for this. Went to a guy, I won't say who it was, this was in Dallas at a center, who was a big workout guy. And he just chuckled at my workout regimen at that point, 2 hours of cardio. He says, I do the same thing. And I was like, I'm normal? And he said, you're pretty normal. It's okay. Don't
But
worry
only
about
because
it.
he did it doesn't make it
It
normal.
didn't, but it made me feel better because at some point you feel like you can't keep robbing Peter to pay Paul.
No.
You're robbing to pay, robbing to pay, robbing to pay. And at some point your body starts to wear out with all the exercise. Then I got into weightlifting, which saved me because then I started to care about how my upper body looked as opposed to just how well I ran the marathon. And I did have one really fast. My second marathon was incredibly fast because it was well under 3. I was 2 hours and 47 minutes and 14 seconds, which got me into Boston. So I was achieving at a high rate. But then as my body began to break down from all the pounding, big back issues, some knee issues, that I finally said, this is suicidal pace that I'm on. So I got to cut back on my cardio to an hour a day, which I still observe. But I started lifting weights, which gave me the outlet to feel like I'm doing something. It's not burning as many calories, but you're still, you feel like you should eat better to feed your body correctly to make you look more like a stud in your upper body. Yeah, right?
I don't know.
Okay,
It's just
so
very hard.
so the other day I weighed when you did, and I hate weighing because
You were down 5 pounds.
I know, but the scale is,
the only
is
one
such
who
a
was
liar.
up was Hazel.
I know. Okay, but well, I'm going to get there. But
Oh.
but the scale is such a liar, especially for women,
don't
because
like
your
scales.
water weight changes so
I don't
rapidly
ever get on a scale. I
that
know
it's going to lie to you because water weighs a
the
lot.
best way I have ever lived my life is my jeans. If I put on a pair of
jeans,
jeans, then I know they fit.
Yeah, that's
when
a
I
good
know
point.
that I lost weight, they're big. When I know that I gained weight, they're tight. Jeans are
Okay.
the best scale. A scale is terrible because also when you put on when you work out and you put on muscle, it shows up as a heavier weight, but you're not really weighing
Muscle weighs more than fat.
So
Yeah, but
I don't know. It's just crazy.
then I made the quote unquote mistake. You did the scales because we were at the gym and there was
Well, there was a
some
scale, and I
scales.
just said, "Oh, I'm
They're
going to get on the
electronic,
scale."
and we thought, okay, well, it's got to be pretty accurate. It's not like
I don't know if
we
it's
have to pull the weight across.
No, it's a digital.
And it's digital. And I jump on, and I'm down. I don't mind saying my optimal weight for me is 165. I like to stay right there, and I was 159.
59.
Yeah, 159. And I was like, where did that come from? Because I'm now fighting. I got a bad knee issue right now, and I my fear is that it's going to shut me down where I can't do cardio, and then I feel like I can't eat. Well, then I'm gonna go back into anorexia.
Well, you can't do that.
Okay, well that's just I've been doing this since 1982.
Well, that's why you can't.
So I
keep
still
doing it at
fight
that
some
pace to save
exercise
your
bulimia.
knees.
Well, that's true. And I got a hip issue that's bothering me. And you keep saying, go get it fixed, and I'm afraid at my age it's not fixable.
Well, you don't know that until you go to a
Well, I've tried.
a different doctor. Yeah,
Okay.
but this is the whole thing. We could do a whole show on.
I mean,
all
my
that,
cartilage is just wearing out in my knee because
Right.
I've done so much cardio.
Right. So
And my hip condition is just from being a little out of balance, and I got a nerve that's being compressed up in my hip, and it just radiates pain down my leg.
right, but you have
But I
to get
manage.
somebody to see.
Do I not ice every single night?
But that's a Band-Aid. But anyway,
Okay,
we're
it's a
getting away
Band-Aid.
from Karen Carpenter.
No, but no, we're not.
Oh,
We're staying right on
okay.
what we're
All
talking
right.
about. This
Well.
is interesting because we're talking about how it impacts us. But then now to Hazel, so then we keep arguing about Hazel's weight because I'm fearful she has put on a
She's
little
not.
extra weight.
She's
I don't
solid
like
as
it
a.
because she gives her way too many
Oh
treats.
please!
I
I
give
won't
her
even.
one little bone, and you
you
give her 3 bones, and you give her these
Are you?
Nulo things.
They're 2 calories. They're nothing. They're less than the big bones that she gets. But anyway, she runs around a lot and she has a lot of muscle. So
She is
when we weighed
incredibly
her, she's
strong, tight.
8 pounds.
I don't know where 8 pounds came from because
I think she was 8 pounds for years.
I know, but I kept telling you she's at least 10. So we weighed her
So we
by
both weighed her
by holding her in our hands.
and then we had to deduct our weight from Hazel, and it turned out Hazel was the only one who gained weight.
She's 11.5 pounds.
She says, that's okay.
And
I'm
Mom,
solid.
who picked her out, thought she was a teacup puppy.
Yeah, well,
that she was going to
big teacup, like
she
the
could
ones
just
that
carry
they have
around
at
in
the
her
fairs
purse.
where they sit in them.
Yeah.
She's like a teacup like that.
Yeah, she's getting
She
sleepy.
says, that's
You getting tired
okay.
of this? That's okay.
I'm 11 pounds. I don't care.
Yeah, she doesn't care because
She says, I look good in a bikini.
Warrior princess. She is an athlete.
Yeah, she's fine.
All right.
You look good.
Enough about
so anyway,
our
watch the documentary.
problems with food, our battles, our love-hate with food.